can't stop, won't stop. More Mandalorian weapon builds, Vibroblade! Hey, how's it going? Anthony Frower here, Crate Sci-Fi. Well, today, surprise, we're doing another Mandalorian weapon build. I just can't stop. Just so many, the show struck such a chord that, a lot of people reacted to it, and there's just so many cool files online. So, this week I did the Vibroblade, right? And wow, this is a great file. I'll link to the maker right here, the person who made the file, and where you can download it. Really great file and really easy. And I sort of did this backwards. So if you're watching these videos now and thinking about making, I did the disruptor rifle, I did the blaster, and now the blade, the Vibroblade. So I think if you're just getting into this and you want to try to do this yourself, I would do the Vibroblade first, because this is very basic, right? Then the blaster, it's a little more complicated, and then the rifle. The rifle was pretty intense. But anyway, because like the rifle and the gun, like for those of us who are into this, awesome, go to it. But to people who are sort of like, I don't know, like you can definitely do this, right? So let's just jump right into this build. It's pretty straightforward. It's the blade, it's the handle. And in my situation, which I think would be true of a lot of beginners, I don't have a huge print volume. So this file I had to cut into 4 pieces where, if you have a big volume printer, you could just do it easily, just 2 pieces. So let's go over the build process on this. Come on. All right, Vibro dagger. We got to slice it up, print it up, store all the pieces. Like I said, this is always like a cooking show. I did this this was pretty simple. I probably made these pieces over, I think, just took me 1 day, 2 days. All right, so we have our pieces. Now, you could apply this to, a toy gun or anything, these processes, but now we're going to work on this Vibroblade, and we want it to match the other Mando weapons that we made. So here's these registration holes, and, I really like using wire hangers. They're getting harder and harder to find, but I like to, it's just a good gauge, and I use them a lot. So here I'm just sanding up the pieces. I have to do this little bit of extra work, like I mentioned in the beginning, because my volume of my printer is not able to handle that at full size. So now what I'm doing is I'm just using these pins. In this case, this one, I can't get my hands on it. So that's just a nail with the head cut off. Not sure what gauge that is. So that just gives it a little more support. Glue that together, and we have that seam we're gonna have to deal with. And then here is the handle. This fits a little bit better, so I'm just super gluing it. 5-minute epoxy super glue in this case, because everything's kind of squared off, I went with the super glue. And here I'm just, sanding. Luckily the emery stick fits perfectly in that gap there. And here what I want to do is I have my piece of hanger. So first thing I'm doing is I'm just sizing it up, right, to make sure that I got the right size pins. And then I'm going to opposite. Now, this is cool. Everybody in the comments said, try the wood filler instead of Bondo. So this seemed like the perfect opportunity to try that, right? So like lots of you, this is me doing this for the first time. So I like that it's, it goes on wet, a different color than what it dries. So that's pretty cool. And I like that it's pink because, it's pretty obvious where you have it. So there, just with my finger, I just put it on, went on pretty simple, non-toxic, and there it is, dry. It dried pretty quick. That was the next day. So now I have some 500. I didn't want to go at this with a heavier grit just because I never used it before. So, it sands pretty nicely. I think my feeling is that I think the Bondo does a better job of like in that case of the knife where I wanted to almost create some volume. But as far as like just filling up the lines, it works really good. So I think moving forward, the wood filler will depend on the job. If I have like a big gap void that I need to fix, I think I'll stick with Bondo. But if I'm just filling like holes and cracks and things, the wood filler is really cool. All right, so here I'm just sanding and detailing. You know, lots of times with the prints, there'll be minor flaws, and because of the nature of printing where it takes a couple hours or sometimes 8 to 10 hours, you tend to want to just fix the imperfections rather than just reprint the whole thing. So here I'm sanding and sanding using my sanding twigs because this knife has little tight areas. And, you know, but overall the wood putty I think did a good job. So here I'm just putting in the pins. So what I do is I put, instead of putting them both on one side, I sort of put one on one side and one on the other. And then also that's going to give me something to grab onto when I paint. So here what I've learned is, what I like to do now is any surface that I know for sure that I'm going to glue, what I'll do is tape it off and put no paint on it whatsoever. Because eventually what I do would be to sand that down to the bare plastic to glue it at the end. So, you know, save yourself a little work. So there I'm just putting little patches so that when I paint that, I'll be able to remove that and have like a virgin surface to glue. So now we're going to hit this with the gray primer so we can find our troubled areas. And that seam, that's what I said, with the wood filler, it did an okay job. The other seam, which was mild, it worked fantastic on. So now I'm just using the air drying spot putty, and this is going to clean up just the little hairline scratches and any little dings. Now, because that knife blade to me is used, I don't mind it sort of with some gouges in there because I think it adds to it. And here I'm just running a little fan on it. It helps to dry it. So yeah, now I got my favorite, the palm sander. I always mention this one. That's soft. That's like, you know, foam. And just a great tool with these props, you know, because it conforms and it's easy on the hand. So here, just with some 500, I'm cleaning up that blade. But it is coming together nicely. And, you know, like I said in the beginning, this is just a nice, manageable size project. So here is that paint that I've painted the rest of the pieces with. It's for like mag wheel rims. It's just a really cool flat black, and it goes on really thick because it's meant to be on like auto wheels. And here I'm going to do a silver dry brush. Now, if you've been following along on these builds, so now this is the same treatment that I've done on the blaster and on the disruptor rifle, right? So it's going to make it a kit, right? It makes it all like in the same family of this character, which is really cool, right? So I'm just going to seal that up with some matte, the areas that I dry brush, and they're just the handle and the top of the blade there. So now I'm going to mask all this off. It's going to be two processes on this. It's going to be, the handle will be Plastidip, and then the blade is going to be graphite. Now, what I like about doing projects of this size is, you know, I can be a little experimental. So here I'm just masking off where we did the dry brush, because I'm going to do the rest with the Plastidip. But the Plastidip, I'm always pretty safe with that. Like, I don't go crazy. But in this case, I want to see what happens where I go really, really heavy, right? So that's masked off. There I got to put the gloss black because that's going to be with the graphite. So there's the Plastidip. That's going to go on the handle, right? And then the gloss, so it's the base for the graphite on the blade, right? Makes sense. So there's that gloss. And what I do, because I let this stuff dry overnight, is typically I take the knife and just go over where the mask is going to come off so that it doesn't tear up. So here I put a really heavy coat of Plastidip, like probably 5 times heavier than what I usually do. And it got so heavy that it dipped and pocked, which for my purposes, I really like the look of that. It just makes it look like a real object that's been used a lot. So here you see, like I said, I'm getting that right down to the bare plastic, which is going to glue together nicely. Very excited about that because I typically forget to do that. And then here, you know, these are the details to me that are just really amazing. This little back detail here, you know, it has silver in there. I decided to mask it off. Some people, the tendency might be to paint right over that, but just revealing that little detail just adds so much value. So here, before I do the graphite, I'm just scoring the masking tape. Like I said, that paint dried overnight, and it could peel up the whole paint. You don't want that. So the reason this graphite is in like a mason jar is this I get off of Etsy from a seller, and I like it better than, you know, at the hardware store you can just get the graphite for the locks and that'll work fine, but this works really nice. And man, for this knife blade, and it's going to contrast on that top detail piece there, which is going to remain the black color. Like, yeah, this is really cool. And I think with all these processes, you know, the more and more I get into this is a great beginner project. So I think I've said that 3 times now. So if you're paying attention, make this Vibroblade. All right, so peeling this off, and I really like, I've been doing this a lot lately, where I mix the graphite with something else, and, you know, just test fitting that up there, and yeah, that looks really good. Now I'm super gluing that handle on there. That kind of happened off camera, I think. So now with the washes, this one I'm gonna do the acrylic, the black and the burnt umber. That's typically what I always use. The black, I always just sludge wash, and that's grease, grime, right? So not too many places here I want to put this. I don't want to put this on the graphite. It'll kind of screw up everything we went through. I'll do like a dot or dab just to give it a little bit of life on the graphite, but I'm always careful to keep that off the graphite. And then the brown is like the dirt, and what I like to do, so the black is a wash, I wipe that off to get it like that grease look. The brown, I just sort of dab, and then I blot it off with a paper towel. I don't wipe it off, because if you wipe it, then you'll kind of have this like, you know, with the old-timey photograph, sepia, that's what it's called, like a sepia look. But yeah, that looks good, and right, I'm always talking about how it reflects light. And then I'm gonna add, now when I do the powders, that's to me is the dust, the dirt, right? So definitely in that fuller, I guess it is, right there, you know, put the dirt in there. And I really just like the way the powders work. This is just a clean old chip brush just to get it out of there. Like I said, those details on the back really came out nice. They really popped once I did the plastic dip. So now with Rub and Buff, just want to bring back a few highlights. I say this every single time with the Rub and Buff. Careful, careful, careful. One slip and it's just a mess. So, you know, before you Rub and Buff, deep breath. And then here, you know, again, this is like the one thing that wasn't even on my radar, and I just love this spine. Like that, really, look at that with the thickness of the plastic dip, and now with the Rub and Buff, like that's just a great thing. And then here, like, you know, some of the Rub and Buff, like I said, I went a little too heavy, so I'm just knocking that back down with some gray powder, right? And it's all like these layers, and when you're going for weathering, I find that when you're correcting sort of things that didn't work out the way you thought, that process of correcting actually adds to the weathering, right? So yeah, that looks good. So now we're gonna put it in the white zone because the beauty shots. Yeah, so now we have the Mando weapon kit, the Vibroblade. Looks really cool, right? And that's what I'm always talking about, like, because these are film props for us. Like, look how it all reflects light differently, right? You have that plastic dip, you have the graphite, you have that matte black that we made look like brushed metal, right? Just, really happy with that. And like those gouges in the blade really sell it. Very cool. Happy, happy, happy. So happy with that, right? And, you know, again, I think this is a great beginner project. And also, too, like I always say, you know, for me, I'm making film props. I think I'm probably going to do a Mandalorian fan film in this case. And just because this is a film prop, not to be on the shelf, to be like, oh, here's something from the show I love. I do slight things, like the colorway, I have no idea off the top of my head what it is on the show, but I did this to match my other weapons, right? But because I know I'm going to be filming this, I did the plastic dip on the handle, right? That reflects a little differently than the graphite on the blade. and then the matte black and dry brush and a little bit of rub and buff on this sort of detail piece, right? They all just reflect light a little differently, and then it makes it more interesting. And then typically in the film, I'm not going to be like, oh, look at the blade. It's going to be like the character pulls it out, does something, gets disarmed, or that. Not even that, you know, just like this, stabby, puts it away, and that's all you ever see of it. So, very effective. And wow, like I said, you know, hindsight is 20/20. I would say if you're really wanting to do this, but tentative, oh, good catch. Go ahead and do this one first, right? It's a basic print. It's very manageable, and it just looks great. Again, the link for the file is in the description. Well, as always, I hope you found this video useful. Please like, share, subscribe, leave a comment. Love to read the comments. And be sure to check out the merch shop. You know, again, I'm wearing merch from Etsy seller, Mandalorian. You know, buying merch for creators just really helps to offset costs, and it's an effective way where, you know, you're not just donating money. You get a cool hat or shirt, and then it helps the maker. But anyway, just remember that I'm here to help make sci-fi.